podcast. My name is Michael Faree, the founder of Lead Generation World. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've got a great conversation in store with AC Evans from Drips. Man, what a really great conversation we have. You know, along with this podcast, I like to really get into getting to know the people that we interview that are in the industry that are making a difference. And today, I think we really get to know AC a little bit better. We get to learn about the rise of Drips and how that all came about, and a little bit about text messaging and best practices and all this sort of stuff. So really, really great information going to be coming here in just a few moments. Don't forget to register for Lead Generation World January. Registrations are at $395 right now. You really can't beat the price. So don't forget to do that. I want to thank our sponsors. We've got Lending Tree and Digital Media Solutions that have been just really, really great sponsors helping promote the show and get the word out. So thank you to them. Thank you to all the sponsors of the show. We really couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much. So let's get into this conversation with AC. All right, welcome to Lead Generation World Podcast. I've got Aaron Christopher Evans, also known as AC, with me today from Drips. Welcome to the show, AC.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, man. So I always like to, part of this show is sort of to get to know a lot of the industry veterans and the people that are making, the movers and shakers in the space, and learn about what their come up was in the industry and what they're doing now and their products and services and how they're helping companies be successful. So I wanted to bring you on because Drips has been a, is it fair to say a real up and coming company in the last 3 to 5 years with regards to the performance marketing industry? I mean, you guys have been making definitely some waves lately, right?
Yeah, we launched, when I say launched, I mean, we had our first trade show, I think it was Contact.io in 2016, one of Jay's old shows, right?
Yep.
I think I may have even met you there. And then we had 4 employees, myself, my 2 co-founders, and one proper employee. And now I think we're closer to 65, coming up on 70 pretty quickly.
Wow.
Doubled or tripled revenue year over year. Got some solid growth this year. Have moved, arguably pretty strong from, completely performance marketing and into more of the enterprises. Because, some of those sales cycles just take forever. And B, because a lot of companies, a lot of service providers weren't comfortable with SMS a couple years ago. So, I mean, you know how it is, all the smaller, more agile agencies and performance marketers, they learn this stuff and test it. And as it gets proven and market validated, then it starts to move into the, whatever, the big brands of the world,
Yep.
the Quinn Streets and the big insurance carriers and ADTs and the like.
Yeah. So before we jump into Drips and what you're doing there, I kind of want to get a little bit. What was you're in Akron, Ohio. What were you doing before Drips? What led you into Drips?
I've been what I would say a solopreneur, since I was maybe 18. Got fired from my 7th or 8th job during or right out of high school. Realized I was a pretty poor employee, and at the time I had met a friend of mine, or I'd moved in with a buddy of mine. He was on the wrestling team with me, and this is like my first kind of eye-opening experience to the world of internet marketing and automation. This was 99, I think, maybe 2000, and I moved into this buddy of mine's house, and I'm renting a room from him. And when I'm checking out the place, he shows me his office, and this office had what literally was maybe 20 or 30 Dell, old school Dell Optiplex computers, and the sides of the computers were taken off, and there's fans blowing in the computers, and I was just like, what is going on in here? I mean, this is way before like Bitcoin mining or anything like that, so there's no no reason that anybody would have 20 computers in a 12 by 12 small home office. And he told me, he said, these are my, and I'm quoting him, he said, these are my spammers. And I'd never even heard the term spammer before. I was like, what is this? What does that even mean? There was no
Yeah.
report spam button back then. It was barely even a recognizable term. There's no can spam laws, et cetera. And he explained to me, he's like, well, look, and he turns on one of the screens, and these computers were literally going into generated AOL and Hotmail accounts. They were logging in, and they were using send keys, which is an old Visual Basics functionality back in the day. And it looked like a person was sitting at the computer working, and it would open up an email, it would hit compose, it would put in Mike's email, and it would send them a link to a weight loss diet or a dating site or whatever it was, and it would
Huh.
say, hey Mike, you should check this out. And he starts explaining it to me, and I'm watching it. It does it over and over and over and over, and it's fast, and the windows are moving all around. And he explained to me what it was, and he said, yeah, anytime somebody clicks on one of these links and joins this dating site, I get paid as an affiliate. um, and I was blown away. I was instantly blown away. I'd never seen automation like that outside of like manufacturer factory stuff, right? I'd never seen software automation like that. Now that was the Wild West back then.
Sure.
All the AOL hackers and crackers and spammers and whatnot. But that was where I kind of grew up in the internet, as eventually a publisher, and then a lead generator, and then a more proper business builder. I built a lot of companies and a lot of projects over the years that garnished a lot of opt-ins and lead gen methodologies, and things like, just as a random example, I had a company that the thesis behind it was called eSnailer. So it was like an emailer, but it was called eSnailer, and they had a little snail icon. And the idea was that anybody could go into the site, and they could send a letter to like their grandma, right? Because grandma's not opening up email, grandma's not reading text messages yet. Again, this is the year 2001, I think. And so this would allow a person that's more fluent on the internet to type out a letter to a loved one or a friend.
Yep.
And it was very much a novelty, but they could submit that letter, they could address the from and the to. And the way I monetized was I put them through a survey path, and I was selling those records, co-registration, host and post records, to big, big telecom carriers, dish network type companies. And I was, making $1.50 and
Yeah.
buying a 20-cent stamp or whatever it was. I had another business that
Huh.
a couple years later, I don't know, you ever seen like little custom South Park characters where you can like design them to look like you? You can like do the hair and change
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
t-shirt and
Yeah.
make them. Yeah, I was behind all of those. So me and my partner at the time built all those engines. So we had some of the biggest doll maker websites on the internet. And again, we monetize people's data on the back end. So if they wanted to save the image, or post it on MySpace at the time, they had to go through a survey path. We monetized the data. Then I started getting into, and we were doing that tens of thousands of times a day. We built automated ways to share those cartoons on MySpace. Back then, there was no share button. You just posted it on your wall, or your friends, or sorry, you had no wall. You'd post on like your you'd edit your own HTML or
Right.
whatever, and then people would have to go to your page to see it, because there was no syndicated feed like Facebook has now. So we built a way that these users could hit a share button, and it'd say share with all your friends on MySpace. And again, this never existed. And you'd hit share, and it would literally ask you for your MySpace email and password. And then behind the scenes, it would log in through PHP curl. It would go to every single one of your friends. Again, this is all approved from the user, and it would post that image on all their friends' walls. So this thing went viral, almost overnight.
Huh.
Started getting tens of thousands of users. I think almost every single person that was on MySpace at the time saw it and used it. So a lot of those types of projects. And then I started being able to leverage those relationships that I'd made with those direct buyers and those lead generators that were sending traffic to our sites as affiliates, and was able to build some of the early host and post ping tree systems.
Hmm.
And then it's just been, iteration after iteration after iteration, but it's always been around the thesis of kind of scaling the unscalable, like from the first time I saw Jimmy with all his spammers and, he had all these things going in 2000 to making a way that people can share images across MySpace and save images out of Flash, which was something that wasn't doable before then, to we made a review site syndication so that companies could get a lot of quality reviews to their Amazon products, and helped companies get top spot for some very hard keywords in Amazon. And all that led me to building a product for a friend at the time a few years ago. His name's Tom. He's a partner in the company now. And long story short, I think he was actually using Bobberdo at the time, who were still friends with them. And they had a texting component that every day at noon, it would send a message to Tom's database of users. And that text message would say, "Hello, call us back at 1-888-555-1212 to consolidate your student loan." It was back in the Obama, loan consolidation stuff. And one day it broke, and he had been buying leads and buying Facebook accounts through me and partners of mine. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, see, I got a problem. My texter broke." And I said, "Well," he said, "We got a problem." And I said, "Well, it sounds like you got a problem." He said, "Well, I gotta stop buying leads, so turn it off." And I was like, "Oh, okay, hold on, we got a problem." So he told me what it did, and it sounded fairly simplistic. So I stayed up all night, coded the first version of what would one day become Drips, and had them live literally the next day at, I think it was maybe 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, because I stayed up, 36 hours, coded this long Twilio script that would literally just do exactly what his did. And I sent him the link and I said, "Hey, when you're ready, open this up and you're going to be back live." And he calls me right back 30 minutes later, and I'm trying to get some sleep. And he said, "Hey man, this thing isn't working." And I said, "What thing?" He said, the texter, you sent it and just says refreshing, 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 refreshing." And I told him, I'm like, "You opened that?" I was like, shut it down." And he freaks out. He closes the window and he's like, "Why? What's going on?" I was like, "Dude, you just sent like 40,000 text messages at, 4 a.m. Pacific time." And sure enough, he opens up his call tracking platform, and he had like 70 active lines, people looking to, consolidate their student debt. So that was the first and only time we messed up with TCPA call scheduling times. But
well, so AC, you went from like a coder, maybe still consider yourself a coder, and a hacker in all the best sense, building things that are, sort of, changing the system and improving it and doing these different things. And out of the blue, you get asked to code something that turns into a company. How is that transition from, coder hacker in the best sense to CEO running, 60 employees?
Yeah, our developers called me, or when we talked about programming, they would always call me a programmer. That's the technical term that I've heard. A programmer. It's like somebody that's a programmer, but they're kind of a bro, and like they don't really know what they're talking about, but they're like dangerous enough to make something work. Yeah. I was never a hacker. I was never into that scene.
I didn't mean it like that. I meant it more, out there trying
hacking things together. Yeah. I'm absolutely that kind of hacker. So, I don't know. Honestly, like looking back, it's not that much different. I look back at all the different projects and all the different companies I've had, and any single one of them had a real potential to scale. Mm-hmm. I just didn't see it that way. I looked at those businesses as a way to have a strong lifestyle business, and I candidly, I moved around the country freely, me and my laptop. I lived in Belize for almost 3 years, beachfront, not a lot of responsibility or care, kind of lived project to project, had some great years, had some bad years. And then I woke up one day and realized I was 30 some years old and I hadn't built anything that was scalable or sellable, and that's when I started kind of digging deep and building something for more than just, cash, right? I've always been a bootstrapper. I've always built businesses that made money. But this was the first time that I had the end in mind versus just getting something working. And as long as it worked, I would be on the beach, and I wasn't really
Hmm.
worried about it because something was making me money. This I doubled and tripled down, spent many 90-hour weeks, for many years, building and building and building and building, with the end in mind. And again, this is, I was fell in love with a girl, we got married, thinking about kids, I'm thinking about longevity, I'm thinking I probably need to get a house instead of living, condo to condo. Um, so it was really just my mindset that changed. Building the business isn't super different than building a product. You have different components and resource allocations, and things need to evolve and become more efficient. It's fun. I like challenge. I've definitely rededicated myself over the years to that. Whereas back in the day, I think I lived as a bit more of a kind of a hedonist, where I just kind of had fun and did what I
Yeah.
wanted. It's just like, I mean, I see all these guys now at Affiliate Summit, right? And they're going out to the big parties, and I'm trying to get in bed by 10 a.m. or 10
Yeah.
p.m. so I can get up for my breakfast meeting now. So that's it. It's just a growing up.
Yeah. Do you think there's like when you look at, I would consider you sort of a serial entrepreneur to some extent. Always looking to at building different things that are, making you money, obviously. Do you think there's a mindset that you have that maybe other people don't have that holds them back versus you that's able to sort of plow through different things and continue to progress?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've had more than anything lately, I think that entrepreneurship has become very sexy. You see it. I mean, it's all over. Whether it's the prevalence of Shark Tank or Gary Vee or whatever it may be, but this idea of working for yourself has become very sexy. And I got into it because I didn't see any other way for me to make that kind of money. I was a bad student, sub 2.0 grade point average, dropped out of college very early, but I was very good at making money online. And, when you're 19, 18 years old, making six figures a year, and, my parents didn't make that much combined, it just seemed like the sensible thing to, to
Yeah.
double down on and focus on. The things that I think people are missing now is a lot of people think it happens overnight. It just doesn't. No other way to say it than that. I mean, there's always the handful of stories that people had the right time, right place, whatever it is, and a lot of people aren't ready to dedicate what it really, really takes. And when I say what it takes, I mean like ridiculously long hours, ridiculous adversity, and I don't think they're able to invest that because they're not thinking about whatever the end is in mind. Again, for me, it was, waking up at 30 some years old and realizing like I built all these really cool things and I just kind of let them die on the vine, and there was a lot of
Hmm.
regret there. And there was a lot of, well, man, what if I would have put in, the long hours, the long days? What if I would have hired a couple of teammates to help grow this thing? What if? And I had a lot of regret and I told myself I'd never had that again. But lastly, the thing that I think people are missing and need to find if they're going to go down this road or any road really that you want to become a master at something or excellent at something is passion. That's one of our core values here at Drips. And passion is like it's thrown around a lot. Like, oh, if you find your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. Whatever.
Right.
The
Right.
truth is, you'll work a lot, right?
Yeah.
And that passion will enable you to work a lot. Like, and that's it. Like, if my job was to redline contracts all day and work on comp alignment all day and to work on ops processes all day, like I would hate it and I wouldn't be able to deploy the amount of energy and effort I do. But because I've been lucky enough to uh, focus my passion on something that I am excited about, which is again that scaling of the unscalable, I'm able to just deploy way more cycles than a competitor would be able to, or deploy way more cycles on something that I'm interested in versus something I'm not interested in. And I think that's what any, would-be entrepreneur or would-be business owner needs to do, is to figure out what that passion is, and then try their best to make sure that what they're working on is aligned with that, because that will just enable them to put more effort in. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is effort cycles.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you one other question, then we'll get on to Drips here. But, a lot of CEOs, founders, leaders, business leaders have personal things that sort of they battle with on a regular basis that inhibit them potentially of doing what, in their own personal opinion, the best that they could do, whether it's a lack of self-confidence, whether it's potentially just knowledge of something, laziness, who knows, whatever it is. But there's things that we overcome on a regular basis. Is there something that that you tend to like consider that's something I'm battle with that inhibits me from maybe doing the best that I can do from a CEO standpoint, from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, I have a lot of I have a lot of problems. Um,
Yeah,
the
just for the sake of other people, like sort of relating with other leaders. I mean, maybe share one that you do.
hmm, there's two that there's a lot, right? I think the biggest thing that CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs can do for themselves is be honest about their problems. I've met a lot of people
Yeah.
uh, that I talk to them. I just think like they must be sociopaths, to think the way they think. And I don't know if it's ego or they haven't got kicked in the teeth enough yet. But that always happens. I've been fortunate enough to be humbled multiple times over as an entrepreneur over the last 20 years to realize that, like, I'm not the best at anything really. So I'm very aware of my problems. I seek counsel. The things that I'm probably the worst at are, one is having hard conversations. So whether that is negotiations, firing somebody, um, giving somebody bad news, that's something that I'm currently thinking a lot about and working on improving personally. And I
Hmm.
mean, to the point where, and I really work on my weaknesses. I make a point to, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I do every month. I try to work on something that's tangible that I know is could be improved on.
That's great.
Now I also believe in doubling down on your strengths, right? Like I am very much a empath pleaser, right? So I have a strong COO to have a lot of those hard conversations for me, because I'm never going to be great at having bad conversations. It's not in me.
Yeah.
I'm good at building a good culture and you know keeping a lot of employees inspired and excited. Um, Another thing that I think a lot about, that I've actually gotten much better at, and this was kind of my last year struggle, was what I call the father founder dichotomy, meaning these are diametrically opposed
Yeah.
personas, and every ounce of energy that is given to one is effectively taken from the other. And I'd seen countless CEOs and entrepreneurs and founders telling me all the stories about how they never saw their kids' first steps, how they never weren't around to see their first words. And again, I was lucky enough to be empathetic enough to believe that that could also happen to me, and learn from their mistakes. And I've gotten much better at it. I'm not great at it. I think a lot of people believe that work-life balance is attainable. I think that's kind of BS. I think it's all about counterbalance and
Yeah.
moving and pivoting on a day-to-day and sometimes minute-by-minute effort. But that's something I'd say that I have overcome to a large degree. And my next big thing is the being better at giving hard conversations.
Got it. That's great. It's really great to hear that stuff. I mean, it's definitely a challenge balancing work and life. Okay, so let's get into this. So you build this tool using Twilio for your client. Um, where does it go from there to what Drips is today? I mean, or better yet, version one of Drips 1.1. Where's the
Yeah,
transition
yeah,
there?
it's a fun story. So day two, right? Tom runs that that script appropriately during business hours, and his lines light up, and he's back in business. And what he noticed after a day or two of running this thing was that my tool was getting a 15% lead to transfer rate, and his previous methodology and efforts were doing a 10%. So it was a 55
Wow.
percent lift in increased performance, which, yeah, as a marketer is kind of
Massive.
unheard of.
Yeah.
And he asked me, he said, well, what did you do different? And I explained that. He said, well, and this was it. I was like, well, your message kind of sucked, right? Like your message was, hello, call us back at 1-888-555-1212 to consolidate your student loan now,
Yeah.
exclamation mark, and it was very broadcast feeling, and it was very one way. And I told him, I said, look, all I did, and I'm a performance marketer.
Yeah.
I was a big emailer back in the day, big publisher back in the day, big into media buying back in the day. So I understand all the different psychology that goes into making an email get read, or a link on Facebook get clicked. So I added in a ton of those different marketing laws, right? Influence through social proof, through concession, through recency, contextually relevant information. So my message instead said, "Hey, Mike, thanks for finding. I'm glad you found us on Facebook. My name's Brett. I'm really excited to help you with your case. Here's my number. Call me back whenever you're ready. I'm here till 6." So again, I'm putting a cap on it, saying I'm here till 6, meaning there's some scarcity involved. There's some personalization there. There's social proof through mentioning Facebook. So now there's a remembrance happening of
Yep.
Facebook lead ads. And all the way through, I made it more humanized, made it more personalized, and that garnished a 50% better response rate. So Tom, being the strong entrepreneur that he was like, "Oh, what else can we do?" Right. And this is still him today. He's always pushing him to keep evolving the product and the methodologies. But the next thing was, they said, "Well, you're sending the same message every day at noon." I was like, if they didn't respond to message 1, the chances of them responding to message 2, outside of anything other than annoyance, isn't great. So I said, what if we changed up the context, right? What if we did? Because I told him, I said, you're doing what's effectively a drip campaign that is utilized all the time by email marketers. I said, so let's do day 1 is noon, day 2 is 10 a.m. and it's a good morning message. Day 3 is 6 p.m. and it's a hope I caught you after work message. Day 4 is a noon message. Hey, I got 1 hour at lunch. And day 5 is a takeaway. It's like, hey, look, I'm here for 1 more hour, and then I'm going to get rid of your file. Let me know. And that bumped them up to a 25% engagement rate, lead to transfer rate. Again, same data, same spend on Facebook, same records, but now a 250 some percent increase in transfers. And again, not being satisfied. What else can we do? And I said, well, what else do you got? He explained to me. I started learning more about his call center, learning more about his, he was doing voice broadcasting at the time. And I said, well, that's not a great experience, right? They're getting texted over here and getting voice broadcast over here. And this is still like today where, most companies today still aren't even doing texting. The ones that are doing it very outbound. They're not doing conversational, and they're definitely not generally threading calls and texting appropriately. So I rebuilt his call system to layer it in with the drip campaigns, right? So I would do a text, then a call, and then later on do a call, then a text, and everything was, relevant and contextual based on the user's experience. That got him up to north of 30% transfer rate. And this was about the time where he's buying like all the media, right? He's getting rich at this point. He's buying records for $1 on Facebook and selling the calls for $30 or whatever it was. And, it was just a really, really huge ROI on this project.
Yeah.
So he was buying as much as he could, which meant he was pushing my system, or my script, I should say, as hard as he could. So one day he called me and he said, hey man, this thing's not keeping up. I'm buying, my leads are stacking up or whatever. It's not keeping up. And I said, well, it's not a real system, Tom. It's a script. It's going to go as fast as it can go. It's going to go as fast as the internet and the service will allow it to go. And he said, well, you got to get it go faster. I need to get through these leads. I got, he's got all the buyers. He was one of the biggest, I think, in the debt consolidation space. And And I said, all right, give me a minute. And I hung up and I thought about it. And I called him back. I'm like, all right, I got it. Take that same URL. He's like, yep. I'm like, open up a new tab. He's like, yep. I said, paste it and hit enter. I said, okay, done. So now he's got two screens going, refreshing. So effectively it was, it was just moving twice as fast because he opened it up twice. So he was threaded at that point. But that only scaled so far. And so that was the time I brought in my co-founder, Anthony, and he's our current CTO. Still one of the best architects and developers I've ever met. I've been working with him since he was, I think, 13 or 14 years old, something like that. Wow. He's been developing since he was 9. An old AOL guy, like that's how we met, was back in the old AOL Why Work chat rooms, which is like a chat room for spammers or whatever. So anyway, Tony rebuilt it. It took him a week or two because he rebuilt it appropriately, and there was a system and a login and start and stop buttons and things that you would think this thing would have had if it was. I was doing tens of thousands of dollars a day in commerce. And Tony quickly told me, he said, hey man, your error log is up to, whatever, I can't remember the exact number, 20 gigs. And I said, what error log? Because I didn't set up any error handling in my original MVP script. And he said, well, every time, somebody texts back to a Twilio number, Twilio is then pinging our system to look for an XML to tell Twilio what to do with that right. message, is looking for a response handler. And I didn't build that because I'm not a good developer. I'm a programmer, right? And I said, well, what are people saying? And this is when we kind of fell back into conversational texting, right? Yeah. Until that point, it was all one way. We were not looking at what people were saying. Yeah. We were not worried about what people were saying. And he showed me, and my eyes were just wide open. I was just like, wow. And the messages were, call me now. I can't talk. I'm at work. Call me at 5 p.m. How much does it cost? No thanks, not interested anymore. Take me off your list. And then I started thinking, I'm like, well, can you thread the view, right? Because I wanted to see what we sent and then what they sent. And when he showed it to me, it was just some of the worst user experiences I've ever seen. It was never call me again, period, right? And then 10 minutes later, they got a call. Or it was call me now, and they get a text 2 hours later saying, are you still interested in talking? Or they said, swear words or whatever. And we texted back. We're like, we think you're still interested in hearing about students. I mean, it was really bad. So instantly we had to fix it because I saw this as a gold mine. Every one of these people that weren't opting out, which was actually the majority of people were very interested. They just contextually weren't able to talk at the time. Yeah. To me, those were the buyers, and if we could nurture those buyers, we would increase, performance significantly. So we, I shouldn't say we anymore. Tony built a chat room, and we staffed a couple operators. No rocket science, no AI, no autoresponder, just 2 people working as many hours as we can give them to work, and they would handle responding to these inbound messages. So if it said call me now, they had a call me now button. If it said I'm at work, they had a spreadsheet over here that had a copy paste answer for I'm at work. If it said remove me from your list, they had a DNC button. And that was when we started being conversational, right? Yeah. And that got us, I think up to a 45% transfer rate, something like that. And again, this is all the way back down from what was once a 10% transfer rate. Same data, same leads, same spend, same cost per lead, and north of 400% are increased performance. And eventually, again, that didn't scale, so we had to build an autoresponder. So if somebody said I'm at work, we would respond automatically, and this is all hard coded, no AI, no machine learning. We respond automatically that would say, sorry, we caught you at work, is everybody coming to talk? So that knocked out 5% of the responses we got. And then we realized, like, this is free form natural language, right? People can say I'm at work any way they want. They can say I'm at a meeting, I'm stuck at the office, I'm working, and spell working WERKIN, right? There's yeah. I thought at the time thousands of ways to say this stuff. So we started building a proprietary language model, and that language model to date has, I think, 50 million human approved nuances, right? So imagine like thousands of different ways to say I'm at work, thousands of different ways to say I'm driving, tens of thousands of ways to say I'm not interested, thousands of
Wow.
ways to say how much does it cost, including, the middle finger emoji, right? Like that's a good way to opt out, that most systems don't adhere to. So in the beginning, when we were 90% human and 10% automated, that has shifted significantly to the point where it's inverted. And I think we're 80 or 90% automated now and 10% human. And we keep the human element because I think it's necessary. We've been through, you've seen me on panels talking about best practices and SMS and calls. And with TCPA, like there's no room for error, right? If
Right.
somebody requests to be removed, you have to remove them. You can't say like, well, my system didn't know what that meant, right?
Right.
So our system, if it doesn't know, and I mean it's got to be like 98 point something percent sure, uh, then it gets kicked to a human for human review. That person reviews it, clicks on the appropriate button, assigns the appropriate response, and that then re-informs the model. Now we have 50 million and one,
Right.
nuances to this thing. It's the only system I've seen that can look completely humanized because it has a human backer. I don't know if you've interacted with Facebook or Google bots, but they're just not there yet. There's too many nuances to the human language to get there. But we have, we lean now on Microsoft's natural language processing, Lewis model. We have proprietary machine learning algorithms that we put in place that help inform the model and help build out our QA. But I think the hybrid is what you're going to see with a lot of AI moving forward, and that's true across the board. You look at Invoca, who they raised I think $100 million so far. Like there's still human input and human elements into auditing these things and reinforming the model. So I think the next 2-3 years you're going to see AI really winning when it's the hybrid,
Yeah.
when it's like human enablement.
You mentioned Microsoft, but doesn't Google have a open source natural language sort of service too,
Mhm.
or is it Microsoft that I'm thinking of?
No, I think Google does as well. We don't use Google products that much. We're mostly a .NET shop, C#.NET. So we've invested heavily in Azure and Microsoft as our stack.
Hmm.
Northeast Ohio specifically has a pretty strong Microsoft following for whatever reason. And our CTO is an old VB.NET and VB6 guy. So that's been the way that we've been able to build what we built so quickly.
Yeah. So you guys, so through the evolution, you guys started to tool this system. Now doing a full stack conversational texting and calling. Tell me about where it's evolved to now. Where is it at today with regards to conversational texting?
Yeah, it's completely humanized. It's appointment setting, it's payment reminding, it's if somebody doesn't plug in their home security system, it's letting them know that they need to plug it in. It's essentially any place where a call center is reaching out to a user for any reason, they should have some capability to do texting. Now, the first thing that any company should do, and I tell this to companies all the time, is just get a two-way system going, right? Enable your agents to do texting because that is better than not, right? Contact rates are at an all-time low and continue to get lower and lower and lower. That's not going to change. Human communication is changed to on demand via messenger, via SMS. And I think that's just going to become more and more prevalent as the years progress. But that's really what we've been focusing on, is moving what I would call further down the funnel, meaning doing appointment setting for a 3-day blinds, right? Like why send them to a 3-day blinds call center when we can just interact with the CRM directly? Moving further down the funnel, that gives us also better enterprise value. We're stickier to our clients. We're not just top of funnel for contact. We're engaging, we're re-engaging, we're looking at, or we're doing rather, renewals. We're doing quoted not closed things for mortgage companies. We're doing yearly reminders for people to get ahead of shopping when they're talking about their auto insurance quotes. So this way they're not going out to the market every year. We're getting ahead of that. So we're increasing LTV.
Yeah.
So it's moved very, 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 very much deeper than just contact and engagement, all the way down through lifetime value, churn reduction, payment reminders, things like this.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really about communicating with the customer where they want to and how they want to, right? Via text. Now, so is text? I mean, I think the assumption is that it's getting harder and harder to get a hold of consumers or prospects via telephone. People just don't pick up the phone, right? Especially if they don't know the phone number. Texting is the sort of logical step for communicating with somebody that they're actually going to see and respond. Are you seeing statistically from when you started 3, 4 years ago, any increase in response rates or even decrease? Because I know there's deliverability issues too, right? That are starting to become a issue, right?
Yeah, look, it's 2000 whatever all over again. For email, it's just not AOL, Hotmail, Google anymore. It's T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T now
Yeah.
that hold the keys to the inbox. We don't. If you're truly conversational and your users have real intent and they're really engaging, inboxing is not much of a problem. Now, can it be a problem? Do messages get blocked if you use the same message off the same phone number 100,000 times a day? Absolutely. But that's one of the things that we manage and maintain on our side is that throughput and deliverability, kind of quality assurance and best practices to make sure we're staying way, 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 way ahead of that. I don't think, uh, yes, I mean, rates, contact rates, call rates are still at a decline. Mobile usage is up. Consumers are getting more familiar with the fact that they can opt out of an SMS very easily. And I think that's a good thing. I think if you think high opt-out rates is a problem, I think you are missing the forest for the trees, right? Because if you can get somebody out of your funnel that you're otherwise wasting time and money on, and you can tie that user back to a specific agency, vendor, source, publisher, whatever it
Yeah.
is, and realize that that company has a 45% opt-out rate where your baseline is usually a 15% opt-out rate, I think that's a great insight to have. So I
And a very efficient way to go about finding that, right? Instead of sitting there making hundreds of dials.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it takes, the feedback loop for most call centers is weeks, months
Yeah.
sometimes. Now, again, there's tools like Invoca and others that can listen to calls at scale. And there's tools like Drips that can hold conversations at scale. And I think it's that level of insight and that hybrid of the machine and the human that is making a huge difference for a lot of companies. I mean, you're able to see, contact rate go from, I mean, how many, you've been in lead gen forever, right? I mean, how many people had a project that was going really good, and then it slowly crept out, right? Or you realize, like,
All the time.
all the scrubs are kind of all the time, every time,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's the nature of the market. So tools like this, I think, enable people to real time see trends. See that this publisher or this affiliate is underperforming against the baseline, and then renegotiate or retool uh, live. Through tools like Active Prospects, Lead Conduit, and others, where they can sit there and bid more because they know that these are higher intent users. And then on the Drip side, we treat those users differently. If somebody's coming from Google, that's a very different buyer psychological profile than somebody that just happened to see an ad on Facebook and did a one-click, lead ad opt-in. Doesn't mean that you can't convert either or both, but it's a different conversation that you have to have, and that's some of the best practices that I think we bring to the table, because we've
Mhm.
had 500 million conversations at this point, across all these channels. So we're able to bring a lot of learnings to the table that the enterprise would have to go through on their own, unfortunately, to get to.
So we've been talking about text messaging here, but really there's a lot of different channels for messaging where consumers are: Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, whatever.
Yep.
Um, is Drip sort of looking at those different channels too, or is it you're pretty hyper focused on the text, which is, listen, plenty of opportunity there, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, we're hyper focused. So chatbot, right? Like, I think of chatbot, whether it's Facebook, whether it's web chat on a website, um, very differently than I think of what we do. Drips is further down the funnel, right?
Hmm.
Chatbot
Yeah.
is good for service, it's good for support, it's good for very, very, very top of funnel things, right? Somebody just might be looking, right, or they're interested in maybe talking. What we're working are people that have asked to be reached out to, so we're deeper down funnel.
Hmm.
And also the thing that we do very different is a chatbot is in what I call the how can I help you business, where they are opening up a world of possibilities. I mean, they're literally saying that, how can I help you question.
Right.
Drips, because we plug in very, very strategically at very strategic and finite points in the funnel and the consumer journey. We know that Mike is at stage B and we need to get him to C. So we're able to have a very direct and very purposeful conversation in order to Sherpa or shepherd that user from B to C. That's a very different problem than solving the how can I help you business. And there's thousands, I mean, there's literally thousands of companies that are in the how can I help you business, right? They're into
Hmm.
cost savings, they're into saving, having less phone calls. They're into warming people up, moving people a little bit further down the funnel. But we are very much into the moving from somebody from D to C, or sorry, C to D. And then when we get them from C to D, we move them from D to E, and then all the way through down to upsell and resells and whatnot. So
Yeah.
it's just a different problem. We're swimming in completely different directions and in different lanes. And I like SMS personally because it goes everywhere with me, right?
Right.
I can't turn it off. I don't have to be on the website. I don't have to be on Facebook. It's more personable. It's more humanized. And I also, to the point on humanization, like that's been one of our product, core values is like we stay humanized again to the point where we will staff out agents to catch when the bot isn't sure, and that's something that all these chatbot companies are not doing. It's obvious it's a chatbot. It's obvious it's automated. You know, you ask it how much money does it cost, it responds in a split second with a huge breakdown.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't think users are ready to chat with chatbots because it's a bad user experience right now. It's akin to me to like being stuck in an IVR tree, right, where I'm just trying to press zero to get to a human.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with drips, you can never tell it's not a human. It's completely humanized. So again, we're going about it a very different way. Whether we're right or wrong, I think the market will decide eventually. But I'm
Yeah.
comfortable having hyper focus on the phone.
Yeah.
Calls, text. I mean, we're partnering with some looking to partner with some call centers now. We're looking at Avatar. We're looking at all the different ways you can use the phone. I don't think that an IVR or a call center is better. I think there's very appropriate times to have a very high end call center. I think there's very appropriate times to hybrid that call center with an IVR. I think there's times to use an SMS. I think there's times to use an MMS, a picture, times to leave a voicemail and times to not leave a voicemail. So that's what we're focusing on is
Yeah.
really the phone.
So let me ask you one last question before I let you go. What's the biggest inhibitor for companies not do that want to get into text and just not really figuring out that you've come across? Obviously, you're talking with a lot of companies, a lot of big brands, and some of them are easily can implement this process. Other ones are struggling. What's generally the reason why they struggle with implementation?
The reason is always change in management, or sorry, change in management, change in operations, right? I mean, and I've seen this time and time again, and I've learned that we need to be more of an enablement for the call center
Hmm.
than a replacement to. We need to be an enhancement of, right? And I've learned this this lesson multiple times as I go in, or one of our teammates go in, and a lot of times they're talking about adding efficiencies that are going to affect uh, somebody's bonus, or somebody's pointed at a direction to do this many dials, this many times a day, this many of this many of that. So generally, it's change in operations, it's change in management, it's change in just thought process altogether. One of my favorite things to do when I speak on stage is to ask like who's involved in any sort of business that has a call center, right? They all raise their hand. So it's like who's dialing on their leads at their call center, their company, everybody raise their hands. And I said, raise your hands if you answer calls that come from an unknown number. And everybody's hands go down. One person maybe, or two people, his hands stay up. And so people are acting one way as consumers, yet
Yeah.
they're going to work and saying, dial more, dial more.
Right.
And I think it's because, to a large degree, they haven't had any other options until recently. There's been a lot of fear around the legality of it until recently. There's been a lot of and there's a lot of learnings. I mean, I think enterprises too, and I'm really happy to say this because this was not the story 2 years ago. I think they're getting more comfortable with buying versus building.
Yeah.
I've seen this with big companies, like Liberty Mutual type companies, ADT type companies, big companies where, and maybe it's just because there's been a regime change where
Hmm.
somebody tried to build, the perfect system, and an insurance carrier tried to be great at texting or outbound calling or whatever it was, and then the regime change happened, and now people are realizing and appreciating that there are vendors out there that are specialized. Like, there's a reason we don't build our own CRM and we use Salesforce. There's a reason that we don't try to rebuild Pardot or Marketo. There's a reason we use Drift for our web chat, not try to implement Drips
Yeah.
to do it. They specialize in web chat. So I'm really happy to see that. I think we talked about this right before we started recording, but the market is opening up now for this methodology, whether it be through Drips or push or whatever it might be. But I think the enterprise has gotten their heads around, okay, maybe it is cheaper and faster and better to buy, whether it's an Invoca or Lead Conduit or a Drips or a Jernaya or whatever it may be. Not everybody's super excited to try to build it anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so hard. And so many companies think, they have the unlimited resources, quote unquote, that they can go out there and just build something. But it's truly a whole other, business for them to go out there and try to build a platform or internally. And projects don't get done; they take years and all this sort of stuff. Um, I know you were just at Invoca, which is a great show. You're going to be at Lead Generation World in January. Anywhere people can see you from now until then? Are you, or is it,
Oh,
or
that's a good
is it
question.
the tire? Is it? I mean, usually it's a slow season around November, December for conferences. But just if you're going to be somewhere, maybe people can check you out, or obviously they can reach out to you on your website and that stuff as well. But
Yeah, I should know this. It's funny. I'm looking up at a screen, and I have a meeting in 2 minutes that is
yeah,
2020 Q1 in December conference planning.
perfect.
No, I think I have some small
Okay.
regulatory conferences, like PACE and others. I know Leads Council just had a couple cool little meetups. We're
Yep.
about to get very involved in Leads Council, which I'm excited to
Good.
say.
Good.
Um, so I think it'll be more of that kind of thing. I usually, as you said, it's usually the slow season for conferences. So I usually try to get in front of a lot of partners, clients, and otherwise, and start our, make sure we're aligned for our 2020 product vision and what's important to them. So I'll probably do a lot of, 2-3 day trips out to LA, 1 day trips to New York, pop out to Vegas. We have some clients out there. So that's likely where you'll find me, is just in and out of a
Cool.
bunch of random cities.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate at Lead Generation World the support by Drips, and if you're in San Diego, be sure to reach out to me. Love to connect with you. And if anybody wants to connect with you, just go to drips.com. Is that
Yeah. Yep.
cool?
Drips.com. If you're interested in chatting with me or asking me a direct question, my email is ac@drips.com. But yeah, we're excited. Again, I think the market is expanding and exploding, and we're just excited to see enterprises getting on board with what once was very scary and confusing to them. I
Yeah.
think it's nice to be recognized as a leader in a category that we founded, and it's nice to have the subject matter expertise that we've built over the last few years to bring to these companies.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining me today, AC, and we'll catch up with you later.